Continuing our series of interviews, today it's an amazing piano journey of Dr. Jimmy Cheung. Stick around, it's going to be great. Hi, Ted Barsley with Alamo Piano Galleries. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Take a look at some of the videos. If you have questions or comments, please send them in. If you're interested in some of the pianos we have on the video, by all means, shop our store at alamopianogalleries.com. And as mentioned in the leader, I have another interview today, and this is the lead part of a two-part video series we're doing for Dr. Jimmy Cheung. And he is currently and has been here not even over 6 months, I think. It's real close to 7 months.
Yeah.
And he is a teacher at MACSA, and we have interviews with a couple of teachers at MACSA, including Mr. MACSA, Ken Thompson. And today I want to start, and I want to, like all my interviews, I have to remind myself, say as little as possible. So it starts with the piano. First question I have to ask, because you've been around the world, you've studied in London, you've studied in the United States, you've played with musicians of all calibers from around the world. Besides all the commonality, I have to ask, how has your welcome to San Antonio been in the last 6 or 7 months? Because we're thrilled to have you here.
Thank you. So, Ted, thank you so much for having me here today. So, I think, San Antonio has been treating me really well. I mean, the first arrival was a little brutal because we're still in the late summer heat, and coming from the Midwest, I guess, having lived in the Midwest for a few years kind of have me sort of get used to the relatively milder summer until here. And then the funny thing is that the first day I arrived, Ken actually has to come rescue me because my car broke down on the side of the road.
Overheated?
He did, yes. So it was a rough start, but after that, I think, things have started to go really well. I've gotten a lot of concerts and students during these few months, and they all have been a joy to work with.
Super great. And the other part I mentioned, this was first of 2 videos. We have a recital coming up next week. Actually, I say we, like but Dr. Cheung is going to have a recital here next week, and so we're going to videotape that and have that as part of the channel as well, and that'll be part of the interview, because I'm going to try to encourage him to do some things. We already talked off camera.
Yes, please.
But okay, so what I want to do is I want to go back, because I've looked at some of your other previous interviews, and I put together a lot of like casual oriented, because I always like to have a casual approach. I want to talk particularly about how you have followed, or the piano has followed you through life. So how old were you the first time that you encountered an instrument? And the question, were you born into a house with a piano?
That's a good question. So I guess I had my first taste of the piano when I was around 5-ish. So what happened was that we just moved to a new condo in Hong Kong, and there happened to be a shopping mall downstairs, and there happened to be a new instrument store, just like Alamo Music, but way smaller, that opened. And I would go there, just mess around with their pianos and keyboard, basically every time when we walk past the store. And so my mom was like, this kid seems interested in the music. Keep in mind, I don't come from a musical family at all, so none of my parents or my brothers plays. So I am pretty much like the first entries of music that my family has, and they had a young son that is very interested or into the music. So after that, my mom signed me up for a lesson, and then I had it for a couple months, and I quit.
And what happened?
I guess.
Do you remember this?
Yeah, okay. I remember it, because I don't know. It's just like I didn't know that you need to practice when you. And also, I feel like, because my original thought was that, you can just play around with it. But I do know there's so many things to learn, and there's so many, things to read, theories. So I guess I was just a little overwhelmed.
It came with rules.
Yes, tiny little 5-year-old. I just want to mess around with the keyboard.
Right. But it came with rules.
So then it kind of slipped away from my life a little bit. I continued to do all the kids stuff, sports, going to school. And then I must have been around 7 or 8, then we started picking up lessons again. Because what happens is that the elementary school that I went to at the time has a choir, and while I was singing in the choir, my heart was actually in the piano, the accompanist, right? So I was like, Mom, I promise you I'm gonna really learn it this time. I'm not gonna quit. So that's how I started like officially.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I have another question because you mentioned like sports and other things you did at school when you weren't doing video games. Where you were
Video games, yes.
Okay, that's important.
Yes.
Because you know as well as I do, probably more so than others, that the same memory part of going through all the levels on a video game is like memorizing different passages of a piano piece.
Yeah.
And so it's that long-term storage of really highly detailed, pigeonholed information to be able to recall in perfect order. That's why I asked. The other thing I wanted to ask is, so what was the first instrument that you had in your house? Was it a keyboard? Was it a piano or an upright?
So my first instrument was actually a very small 61 key keyboard that was given by my aunt.
Okay, there you go.
So one of my aunts, she used to study piano for, I guess, for a little while when she was young. And then when she knows that her niece is now taking on the piano, so back then I didn't have any instrument to practice on, and she's like, hey, use my old keyboard. I think it's an old Yamaha synthesizer thing that not only can you play with the piano sound, you can mess around with different...
But it hooked your curiosity.
Yeah, but it definitely opens up my ears. Oh, I can do this, I can do that. And so that was my first instrument.
Okay, so now I have another question. You mentioned that you were growing up in Hong Kong and you lived in the Congo. So your first language was, what was your first language?
Cantonese.
Cantonese.
Yeah.
Okay, so you speak Chinese?
Yeah.
You speak Cantonese?
So yeah, lessons, everything is in Cantonese, and then the language on the scores are in Chinese, basically. Yeah.
Okay, so then what happened? When did a real acoustic piano or a piano, 88 key, weighted action, whatever you want to, when did that come into your life?
That was actually not until I was 11, 10 or 11. Yeah.
Wow, so you had a lot of years on a 61
I stick with that
key.
keyboard for a couple years, which I believe we still have it in the house.
Whoa,
actually.
You need to get it, Matt, and frame it, make an art piece out of it.
Yeah.
Now that you're a professional, world-class, pianist, I mean, that's an amazing thing. Okay, so then the first time, I know you've done a number of competitions and you've had great fortune at competitions as well around the world. Tell me about your first competition. What was that like up here? Not in terms of how well you did or good, bad, just your nerves as a musician.
Sure. I mean, I actually still remember the first competition very vividly. I guess part of the reason is because I didn't know it was a competition. It's just something my teacher signed me up for and say, hey, you're playing this.
Oh, that's so good for you.
That time. And this piece, right? So I remember being really proud because the piece I was playing is a Mozart's G major minuet, which somebody told me he wrote it when he was 5. And I was like, I'm not too bad myself. I'm playing that at 9, right? And so I remember going to the Hong Kong City Hall, which is one of the major concert halls in Hong Kong, with the huge piano. It's a 9-foot concert grand. So the competition really steps up their game.
Did you felt important then, huh?
Yeah, and then it was pretty well. If I remember it correctly, it was pretty well attended as well because all the parents and other kids, friends and parents also there. So I played the Mozart minuet. I remember feeling the warmth of the stage, spotlights. And then when I look at the audience, I couldn't see a thing because of the spotlight. And that actually has a, calming effect.
It's kind of empowering because you assume there's people out there.
Yes.
You know they're there. You feel they're there, but you can't see them.
Exactly.
They see me.
Yeah.
Strange. So, how'd you do?
I think I did pretty well. I think I got a 3rd prize out of it, yeah. And I also played it from memory. I think that was also the first time that I played something in front of people from memory.
That's a lot of information.
Yes, but again, I was young. I didn't really feel nervous at all, partly because I don't know it's a competition, and I also don't know, I just feel like, okay, it's something that I play, and then people are gonna clap.
Well, since your trial by fire was so cool, Did you ever get nervous at a competition after that?
I did, actually. I mean, I guess just like everybody, when you grow older. You become more self-conscious about.
Oh yeah, particularly teenagers that
Yes.
don't care about how they look.
And then also, once I play a couple years, I know there are certain expectations from people like, okay, this kid is gonna play well. So, that's, I guess, kind of the pressure that I guess normal
Right.
teens who are pretty good at the music will have. And right now, as I'm teaching, I'm also very, very well aware of this, especially with my teenage students. So I teach them how to manage, their nerves and just in general how to be
Well, on a
on stage.
competition level, was there ever a point where you were at a competition? We're honest, because I'll tell you the truth. If I were at a competition, and which I never would be, because I know what it takes to get there, and I saw you on the roster, I'd be pretty uptight, because it's like, this dude's been around, not just like locally, like he's played around and he's placed. You're like a guy to go, like, you gotta like listen to, right? Have you ever felt like, I'm here and maybe other people are nervous about playing like I'm nervous about playing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, because, when you go to more competitions, you actually meet the same bunch of people all the time. You run into the same people in this event and then that event. And that's especially true in Hong Kong, where the classical music scene is kind of pretty small. So you run into each other very often. So I see my friends there. So I would say a lot of the times I know these people pretty well.
Right.
So I know, I know we're competing technically against each other, but we also have each other's back. Because, what's your pre-performance routine, or like, what do you eat before you play? That's the kind of secrets that we share among each other.
What is it? It's supposed to have like orange juice before you go out, so
Or
you
a
have
banana
all the
or
brain
something.
sugars.
Yeah.
So, how did you end up just in the United States? Because that's a bit of a journey. The piano brought you here.
Yes, I would say I'm very fortunate enough to have been to many places on Earth, and mostly this is because of the piano and music in general. So what happened is that, I first went to England to study, and then I got my bachelor's and master's there, and then after that, after master, I was kind of thinking about like what I wanted to do, for the rest of my life, whatnot. And I happen to have a seniors who has been to the school that I eventually attended, the University of Cincinnati.
Oh, gotcha.
College Conservatory of Music. And he told me about the great Doctor of Musical Arts program there, and also the the amazing faculties that they have there. So as a person who's never been to the States before, I only apply to one school, which
Wow! You threw a set of loaded dice in one direction. That's
exactly
great.
Yeah, I was like, even if I don't get in, it's not a big deal. I mean, I guess I'll just go
See
out to
what
Hong
happens.
Kong and work and whatever. So I went to audition for CCM and I got accepted.
Oh, that's wonderful for you.
Yeah.
And so then while you were there, you started teaching, right?
Yes. So part of my acceptance is that I'm also a graduate teaching assistant.
Oh, wonderful.
So I get to work with wonderful, mostly undergraduate students there. So I teach not only private piano, but also group piano. Now that's a totally different ballgame when
I
teaching.
bet that's a
group.
lot of fun.
Yeah, yes. So, and also I guess my experience with keyboards come into place, because when you teach group pianos, there are keyboards.
Well,
right?
I have a question. How do you teach group piano? Because I tried to have group piano, and it was fun, but there's different levels. You get everybody pounding on a couple of chords, and then you get them to so they can follow along.
Yes.
Just based on instinct.
Yeah, I mean, teaching group piano is actually very difficult, but I'm lucky to have and also, I grew up in an environment that have no exposure to group piano whatsoever.
Right.
So
Classical music is individually.
Yeah, especially in Hong Kong, in England, there's no exposure to group piano whatsoever. But I'm lucky to have a very good supervisor, mentor. Her name is Dr. Michelle Conda, which she's actually going to retire from the school after this school year. So she is an expert in group piano. So she, every week, us graduate teaching assistants, we meet, we figure out lesson plans, how to work with students. But mainly, we are actually working with two types of students in group piano. people who have no experience whatsoever who just want to get started in college, and also music majors who need to complete their keyboard requirements. So these are the two main people that we work with.
What's always fun and interesting about the concept of anything group, whether it's a drum circle or a guitar circle, a ukulele group, and even a group piano, is that it's always based on a popular song that you have to assume almost everyone there has heard. And that's what makes it fun, is because it's always popish. And even though you're learning, Baby Shark, right, but everyone's learning it on the piano.
Yeah, we do teach that in the group piano.
So you see what I'm saying, right?
Yes.
It's always based on the ease and access of a popular melody and rhythm, because it breaks it down to where the instrument is not that complicated.
Yeah.
Okay, next I want to ask a little bit about, since you've been, because I believe you left from the conservatory in Cincinnati to come here for MACSA. How did you and Ken Thompson, or how did you guys find one another?
That's a very good question, because, me and Ken, we've never met each other. We never know each other existed. So what happened was that last summer, I went to a conference in Chicago, which is called the National Conference for Keyboard Pedagogy. Yeah, and I was just presiding a few sessions there, and also some of my friends are presenting. And also, that was also the first time where they went back in person after COVID, so I really want to go.
Oh, you need to get out and get your name and face in the market.
Yeah, and also I wanted to just network a little bit.
Right.
And I met Ken at the Starbucks in the hotel where the conference was held. Yeah, so if I remember correctly, I guess what happened, he posted an ad on the conference app saying that, hey, I'm looking for teachers. And I remember looking at that and I was like, yeah, sure, I'm looking for a job too. So it sounds like a good match. So I messaged him, and I know, and he told me this after the fact. I didn't know that. He didn't reply to me on the app. So after a few days, I kind of messaged him again, and then he finally applied. And then I find out later what's going on is that he's trying to test me, actually, to see if I'm like really serious about this, because I messaged him like twice. And so we met in the Starbucks, and then we started talking. He told me about San Antonio, which I have absolutely no idea about back in the time. I mean, I know there's an amazing NBA teams here. That's the only thing that I know. And also Alamo music, I've heard about this, a little bit on the internet, but that's the only thing I have connection with.
Wow, well, that's kind of an interesting story, because I do understand Ken's approach. It's like, you're fly fishing. You can't set the hook. You need a little cooperation before you can really see if you have a live one on the line. And in this day and age, with the internet and the ease of access and communicating with almost anyone, you got to find out who's sincere and who's not. Okay, so I wanted to ask you, do you have anything special that you have prepared for your recital that's coming up?
Yeah.
And tell me about how long your program is and what you plan on putting together, because I know you put together great programs.
I hope so. Yeah. So the program next weekend, it's going to be just under an hour long. So music's, I would say, relatively light by classical standards. So what I'm trying to do is that the program is actually what I consider like hidden gems. So I play composers like Granados, Schuberts, and Chopins. These are all big name composers. But the music I chose in particular are works written by them that are less well known.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's what I consider a hidden gem. So I play the Chopin's Rondo. Hardly anybody play that piece. I remember looking online trying to find some good recordings, and the Chopin competitions that holds every 5 years, and every year there will be maybe 1 or 2 entrants that play that piece. But I listened to it. The reason that made me fall in love with that piece is because I listened to a recording by Horowitz when he played that in his living room, and it was just amazing. So I was like, I have to play that piece.
The one thing I can't tell you is that as a pianist in my life, I would look at pieces that I knew I could never tackle, but I always used Horowitz recordings as my reference, because I didn't think there was anything better, in spite of what people said about his technique.
Yes.
I mean, I don't think anything about his technique even applies to the guy. But at the same time, those to me are the best reference recordings.
Yeah, I totally
for
agree
a lot
with
of-
you. Horowitz is one of my favorite.
If you're going to sit down and put on headphones and look at something with a pencil and read through it, those are the ones to listen to.
Yeah.
And a lot of, I can say this probably with certainty, you don't have to get up and move a needle like I did when I was a teenager. It was really, if you missed it or you got lost, it's not like it's a CD where you can bounce back. If you got lost in a transcript on a vinyl record when I was a kid growing
didn't
up,
know that,
or a
actually.
cassette tape, okay?
Yeah.
And this day and age, I mean, for the last, 25, 30 years, people have had digital and
Yeah.
back. I would go back to 2 because 2, the minute 2 is right here at this
Yes.
measure. I mean, skipping a needle, it really, it made studying piano or trying to take out details a little bit complicated.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting. The Horowitz recording and the other things that you have for your program. I got distracted.
No,
I got
no,
excited
that's-
when you mentioned Horowitz. Like, oh,
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
I listened to.
And that's certainly a wonderful piece. I also wish more people play that Chopin piece as well. I mean, we all know, his ballades and scherzo sonatas.
Right, and particularly at the competitions, you hear the same
Yes.
7, 8, 9 pieces, and so it's nice to have some different,
Yeah.
a different approach.
And I believe the person that plays the rondo at the Chopin competition actually could end up getting the second prize. So that was not too bad, actually.
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah,
I've also have been aware that at the Chopin competitions, this is not for a product plug, but the Shigeru Kawai has been picked a lot.
Yes,
by the
I've seen it
pianos.
so many times. Yes.
And I think that's because it has something to do with the action on those pianos.
Yeah, and also I think it just has a tone that really suits the Chopin's music. Yeah, so the other 2 pieces, I'm going to start the program with Granado's Valses, Poetico. Again, Granado's, big Spanish composer, is very famous for his operas, Goyascas, which later on also make it into a piano suite. But I chose the Valses Poeticos, again, simply because I think it's just a very elegant.
A lot of
Nice
the Spanish piano's
opening.
intense, and that's a little lighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see how early Granados was influenced by Schumann. The piece is very Schumann-esque, it reminds me a lot of the Papillon by Schumann, which is also in the same key, kind of same dancey moods. And that's amazing. And then in the middle of the program, it's Schubert's 3 keyboard suites, the Drei Klavierstucke, which I wouldn't say that piece is not famous, but definitely not as, played as often as his impromptus, for example.
Gotcha. What we're going to do now, since we're right almost in the middle of your program, is we're going to go have a listen to you present some of these main themes or whatever you put out.
Sure.
hey, you did a great job, you sounded wonderful. But actually, that leads to questions. Every time I hear a pianist perform, I always ask the same thing. Do you write music? And that's not a trick question. It's just, do you write your own music?
Yeah, well, so I unfortunately don't write my own music, but I've written cadenzas for concertos and
Okay.
also arranged different things.
Before the interview, we were talking, and I used the cadenza to trick him into admitting that he does compose and he does write.
Yes.
Okay, so that we left all that off camera, but the idea is when you get to cadenza, they usually put a squiggly line. Sometimes they give you parameters, right? 18, 24, or they just put a question mark. And then you have a lead in to go back in. Sometimes it's to draw the orchestra back in or the other pianist. So at first you admitted that, well, I can do and turn around like an invention off of the same piece. So the idea is that given directions, you can compose.
Yeah.
So then you can really compose if you had your own internal direction or inspiration, nice sunrise, or whatever it is. So, and I always believe that musicians that say, "Oh, I have to have music," that's not really true. But you gotta push them. And there are some that really have no idea what to do. I want to let you expound on your cadenzas and what you do. Would you do a modulation? Would you jump a minor third this way or that way or a sixth? And I'll let you talk.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on my mood, I guess. You know, we have to realize that the cadenzas, the history of cadenzas actually stem from like improvisation. Like people like Mozart. I mean, nowadays we have some of his cadenzas, but he often changed it when he plays his own piece, and a lot of times it's just an improvised thing. So I guess if I'm trying to write a cadenza, I'll try to keep it that way. Maybe I'll leave out a couple measures, just, as a secret or whatever. So the people who play it later on, they might have a different view on it. For me, I think the cadenza is kind of like the king of the piece, because I remember one time I was preparing a student for a concerto competitions. There's a certain time limit, so we have to make cuts. And he's like, "Oh, let's just not play the cadenza." I was like, no. We are doing the cadenza. You can cut, whatever parts you need to, but we are not touching the cadenzas, because I think it's really an opportunity for an artist or a soloist to really showcase,
speak out.
Whatever they are, without having to care about anything. So, because there's nothing but you there, right? So, yeah.
Do all your fancy tricks. Do everything that you
Exactly,
like. And when your friends say, "Play me something," put all of those 20 different play me somethings, hook them all together in time.
Yeah. So I remember when I was at school, there was a year where one of the Mozart concertos was chosen as the set piece for the concerto competitions, and we all have to come up with a cadenza. So I went for the traditional route that time. I wrote something that I believe is very Mozartian, but I also have friends who really went wild with that.
Push the limit?
Yes, exactly. Jazz, whatever they can think of, just put in there. Yeah.
That's pretty wild to listen to, though, right?
Yes. And I bet the judges have a great time.
Does it make you feel less creative when you hear a guy that gives a little mini history of the piano? Like he starts off, he reinvents the song like Bach would play it. Then he does it real heavy like Beethoven would voice it. And then he does it like real lighthearted, like maybe Chopin. Then he turns around and makes it a ragtime piece. Then it's a jazz piece. Then it's like a boogie woogie. And it's like, this guy just intimidated that melody through every popular thing
it's basically
of
like
piano
a
through time.
10-course tasting menu.
Right.
There. Yeah.
But really, if you think about it, and you know this to be true as a pianist, you don't have to learn anything for that cadenza. You have to practice stylistically changing on a fly.
Yeah.
But it's not like you have to memorize new literature, because you're making it the same song up 10 different ways. And so there is a little bit of freedom in thinking about it that way, but that's a lot of cram coursing for, a cadenza. And then again, you're playing it to a classical audience, which means it may not really work.
It might not be something that they expect, but I think, I don't know, nowadays with how the atmosphere in the classical music world is changing, I think the audience are way more.
How would you feel if you were a judge at a competition and someone threw that down?
You know what? I I would take it. Because
That's what I thought.
there's no, like, the reason I wrote a Mozartian cadezza was because I guess I kind of misunderstood the rule that you have to create something that is kind of, go with the whatever style that is. But then after that, I was thinking, I should have written something else.
So, besides your concert recital here, what else do you have planned, say, like for the rest of the year? I know you have, because you're living at the point of success, because you're working every single day on piano, right?
Yeah.
And that, I mean, my hat's off to you, man. Accolades to you, because that is a hard thing to do as a classical pianist, is to have work every day.
Yes. It is difficult. And I would admit I was a little nervous moving here in the first place because I basically know nobody here. And I kind of took a chance and then see how things goes. But then I remember a few years ago when I made the decision to came to the States to study, it was the same kind of feeling. And I wouldn't say I'm like super successful or anything, but I got a lot of great connections and lots just overall in Cincinnati, I got a lot of great experience. So I think it's all worth it.
I'm really amazed at your piano journey, primarily for a couple of really essential, basic reasons. And this is what's fascinating to me. A good fractional percentage of a big chunk of your piano journey was done on a 61-note keyboard.
Yeah.
And think about it, okay? And then look at the progress, and then look at where you're at now. And when we're finished with this interview, we're going to go around the store and just, play a bunch of different pianos, and I'll introduce you to some things that I'm pretty sure you may not have an idea exist, okay? Mm-hmm. And so to me, it's like, wow, it doesn't have anything to do with the instrument or the practice instrument. It has everything to do with the drive of a piano adventure and a journey through life. It's almost like a person's destiny over music through the piano. And it's like, if you have that, you don't really need an instrument.
Yeah.
Even though you need something to
we
practice
do need something.
on.
Well, I currently don't have any acoustic piano. I mean, I told you off camera, I was just
that is
rolling
amazing
on a Roland.
to me, because you are, to me, one of the most amazing of all the piano journeys I've heard, because I thought, this proves my point. Piano is not about, you have to have some physical practicing. No one's going to deny that. But 90% of piano is up here.
Yeah.
Because I know you've thought about piano more than you've played piano.
Yes, as much as
you rehearse in your head without an instrument. You probably have most of your life.
Yes,
and I'm fascinated by that.
Perfect pitch helps. And
that's an amazing thing to me, because it's like, that just proves my point. If you think about music enough, it's almost like you're sitting there playing the instrument, whether it's a guitar or a bass or a trumpet. But a piano is a little bit more complicated because you have so many different parts going on. And my hat's off to you. That is just really absolutely amazing. We look forward to having some more recitals with you, and also watching your piano adventure and journey grow from this point at. And right now, I'm just so thrilled and happy that you're here in San Antonio, and that I know I can find you. Any given day of the week, you're right at MACSA.
Call me.
It's been a great interview. It's been a lot of fun. This isn't the first time we talk,
No.
Okay, very good. We're going to do this again.
Yeah.
This is Ted Barshley with Alamo Piano Galleries, and you've been listening to an interview with Dr. Jimmy Cheung, an instructor and classical performing artist at MACSA. And included along with this is a sister video, of which we've put portions of his performance at his recital here. Thank you so much. We look forward to you in the future, and we look forward to having you back, Doctor. Thank you so much. It's been a great thrill.
Thank you.
Thank you now.